Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch regular City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. The time is 6:01 p.m. We will begin with our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. If I can ask you all to please stand. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your blessing as we gather this evening. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you clearly show us the way to provide good governance for our community. We ask that you grant us all grace, patience, and prudence for current and newly elected as we plan for our city, our residents, and our businesses. And Lord, we thank you for the abundance of sunshine you've placed upon our shoulders. But I ask you, Lord, if you can please turn the temperature down to something in the double digits, maybe increase the wind a little bit, and add some light showers that are void of humidity in the days following. We ask all this in your name, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
E1 is recognition of senior planning technician Ryan Campbell, 5 years of service to the City of Farmers Branch. June 12, 2012 marks Ryan Campbell's 5-year anniversary of the City of Farmers Branch. It was during his time an undergraduate student at Texas University, Mr. Campbell first discovered the world of urban planning. As a career that narrates lifelong affinity with architecture and curiosity of the interactions between the built and natural environments, with his desire to help people, Mr. Campbell was ecstatic about making urban planning his chosen career path. In May 2013, Mr. Campbell received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Urban and Regional Sciences with a minor in Business Administration from Texas A&M University. I support that help protect. While working on his bachelor's degree, Mr. Campbell served on the City of Fort Worth as an intern for the Historical and Cultural Landmarks Commission. Having enjoyed his time in this role, Mr. Campbell decided upon graduation that he would begin his planning career serving in municipal government. Mr. Campbell would finally see this desire fulfilled when on June 12, 2017, he was hired as the planning technician for the City of Farmers Branch Planning Department. In October of 21, Mr. Campbell was promoted to the newly created position of Senior Planning Technician. Through both roles, Mr. Campbell has assisted the planning department in a variety of efforts. These have ranged from day-to-day operations, such as the processing and development applications, to big-picture items, such as the creation of maps used in important city documents. Mr. Campbell also facilitates the planning and zoning commission meetings. Mr. Campbell's interest in planning did not stop at Farmers Branch. He is currently in pursuit of his master's degree in city and regional planning from the University of Texas at Arlington. He is very active in the planning community. Mr. Campbell currently serves the Midwest section of the Texas chapter of the American Planning Association as both emerging planning leader, EPL representative, and a UTA student representative. Mr. Campbell also serves UTA Student Planning Association as both treasurer and the Midwest section student representative. Seeking to tailor his career towards sustainability, Mr. Campbell holds the leadership in energy and environmental design, the Green Associate certification, and is a member of the North Texas chapter of the Green Building Council. I was running out of steam. Technology is here. Mr. Campbell is immensely proud
of what both the economic development and planning team and the city overall have accomplished in his first 5 years with Farmers Branch. He's excited for what lies ahead for both the city and himself in his journey towards becoming a fully fledged planner. Mr. Campbell would like to give a very special thank you to his parents, Mr. Cheryl and Mr. Irvin Campbell, and brother, Mr. Gerald Campbell, as well as the rest of his family for their love, encouragement, support in achieving this incredible milestone. Mr. Campbell would also like to thank the entire Farmers Branch city staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, and all our boards and commission members, and everyone else who has a hand in making the city a truly special place. Mr. Campbell would like to give a special shout out to Mr. Rupa Sen, Deputy Director of Planning, Ms. Allison Cook, Director of Planning Development and Planning, Mr. Chris Webb, Senior Planner, Ms. Sarah Bergman, Senior Planner, Ms. Stephanie Mullins, Economic Development Coordinator, and Mr. John Land, Interim City Manager. Brian, you've been here a long time, and what inspires me most is that attitude that you're showing right there. Every day you see this guy, he has a smile on his face, he's very upbeat, he wants to talk to you. He's one of the friendly faces you see when you walk into the planning department, economic development, and tourism offices, and the way he remembers people's names and things about him, engages you in conversation. It's just an added benefit of the skill set you bring to our team and what you mean to this city. And so I just want to say thank you on 5 years, and hopefully you turn that into 25 or even like Charles Cox, 35. We don't know how long it's going to last, but good luck in your pursuits as you look to advance yourself not only educationally but professionally, and we look to see those benefits here in the city of Farmers Branch. So thank you. Allison, Sarupa, I think you both have stuff to say as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for those kind words. About Brian, I would talk from my years with him working for City of Farmers Branch. The first thing I'd say about Brian is he doesn't know how to say no. Whenever any staff member, any member of the community, they ask for something, Brian will always start with yes. He's always eager to help, he's always eager to learn, and he's always taking that extra step, that extra effort that's beyond his job duties or his responsibilities. Now, he's a good friend at work, and he maintains his friendships beyond work as well. He pays attention to detail, and he takes care of his day-to-day work in a manner that really speaks volume. I'm really fortunate to have Brian on our team, because without Brian, I don't know whether we would have survived some of the difficult transition times that we had in our team. And I look forward to working many more years with him. Thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations and good luck on everything you are trying to do.
I've had the pleasure of working with Brian the entire time he's been here, and I can say Brian is consistent. He is reliable. If you need something done, you can always count on him. And I was traveling in the month of June for a little bit, and I missed that every single day at 5, somebody coming up, it's Brian, saying, "Is there anything else you need before I leave?" I missed that so much for a hot week, because that's what he does. Every single day at 5, he comes into every office, just in our suite, other suites. "Is there anything else you need before 5?" And he means it. And I will have to say 99% of the time, I say, "You know what, I'm all good." And I've committed this year to him. I'm gonna have a list. I'm gonna start having things for you to do, because I feel like I'm failing you. So I will have things for you to do because you are so kind to ask. So I thank you for your consistency. I thank you for your good attitude, and you are just overall very kind, and you're a blessing to us. So congratulations on your 5 years, and we'll take a picture with the whole suite. Okay, come up, Brian.
Brian, here's your 5-year pin, and congratulations again on all of us for 5 years at the City of Farmers Branch.
Thank you so much. I did. A planner plans. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Mayor Dye, City Council. Thank you so much for this incredible honor. Just wow, 5 years. Well, I thought a bit over these past few weeks about what I was going to say when I finally got up here. I'm privileged to call urban planning my calling, and I wanted to come up with something that encapsulated that. I think I found one word that we planners use quite often that exemplifies a large part of why I'm honored to work for this city, and that word is resilience. In its most basic form in the realm of planning, the term resilience describes how we planning professionals prepare cities to deal with physical threats, such as extreme weather events and other phenomena due to climate change. In my planning history, theory, and ethics class that I took this semester at UTA, we were challenged to delve deeper into and look deeper into what resilience means. We discovered that this meant not only considering the threats faced by cities themselves, but also taking into account the threats that people themselves face. We took a look at cities that had resilience plans in place for the threats faced by people, including economic strife and even discrimination. It's the human aspect of resilience I want to zero in on because this got me thinking about the characteristics an individual should embody in discussing resilience. When I was first hired 5 years ago, never did I imagine that we'd be faced with a pandemic that would force us to adapt to a complete upheaval of our daily lives, or a winter storm unlike anything we had ever experienced before. It's even more unfathomable to contemplate there would be a time in which we had to deal with both simultaneously. I bring up these two scenarios because I believe both brought out the best in all of us. It was through the headstrong leadership, problem-solving skills, and compassion of all of those who serve this awesome city, many of whom are in this room tonight, that we came through both tumultuous situations better than we could have hoped, all while maintaining the level of quality service our citizens expect and deserve. I'm extraordinarily proud of what both the Economic Development, Tourism, and Planning team and the city as a whole have accomplished over my first 5 years here, and I'm excited for what's next. Again, I'd like to thank my parents, Cheryl and Irvin Campbell, and my brother Gerald Campbell, as well as the rest of my family, whose love, support, and encouragement were critical in achieving this epic milestone. I'd also like to once again thank Mayor Dye, City Council, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as members from all of our other boards and commissions for their service. And finally, I'd like to once again thank everyone who works for Farmers Branch, with special shout outs again to Shrupa Sen, Allison Cook, Chris Webb, Sarah Bergman, Stephanie Mullins, Kira McCardle, and John Land. Thank you, everybody.
Next is the city manager's report on items of community interest. Mr. Land.
Thank you, Mayor. The Farmers Branch City Council recently passed an increase in property tax exemptions for the city's over 65 and disabled persons. Prior exemptions were $60,000 for the disabled and $80,000 for over 65. The new exemptions are now $100,000 for each category and were approved with a unanimous vote by council. These changes provide Farmers Branch citizens in these two categories with some of the most favorable property tax exemptions in all of North Texas. They'll go into effect in this year's Dallas County tax appraisals and assessments. The Farmers Branch Police Department will host a popular Coffee with a Cop on Saturday, August 6th from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Starwood Cafe. This is a great opportunity for citizens to ask questions, voice concerns, and get to know the officers in your neighborhood. Hope to see you there. Tickets are now on sale for the 13th Annual Bloom and Bluegrass Festival, scheduled for October 14th and 15th at the Farmers Branch Historical Park. This event has been nominated multiple times as the Bluegrass Event of the Year by the International Bluegrass Music Association. Music headliners include the Del McCoury Band, Rhonda Vincent and the Rage, and the Dan Kaminsky Band. More information can be found at bloomandbluegrass.com. We are extremely pleased to announce that Stacy Henderson is returning to the city of Farmers Branch after a brief sojourn with the city of Lucas. Stacy previously worked for the city of Farmers Branch for some 24 years in both community services and the Planning and Economic Development Office. Stacy is a registered municipal clerk, a well-respected city secretary, and very familiar with her community. She will fill the secretary's position beginning Monday, Monday, July 25th, and she is with us here tonight as a volunteer to observe the council meeting and all of its technology. Please join me in giving a Farmers Branch welcome to Stacy Henderson. I think anybody's clapping louder than Archie. And as always, we encourage everyone to visit farmersbranchtx.gov and sign up for e-news to receive the latest in city news and information delivered bi-weekly. Mayor, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Land. Next is citizen comments. There's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak. No disparaging or inflammatory remarks directed at any member of City Council or staff will be allowed. We have several people signed up to speak tonight. First is Vicki Harrison. Name and address, please.
Vicki Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way, Farmers Branch, Texas. That's it. All right. Tonight, I hope, is the beginning of council meeting times stabilizing, so it will be much easier for citizens to plan to attend. It was troubling last month in light of the current financial climate and the tremendous economic struggles of many of your residents that council took extensive time to discuss a plan to ask for $18 to $25 million in bonds that you characterize as quality of life initiatives, containing some funds for infrastructure, but using additional funds for remodeling and updating, as well as parks that had already received millions of COVID money. Why not police, streetlights, and myriad citywide neighborhood needs? Wisdom in these economic times calls for needs, not wants. In the light of our unstable economy, inflation, recession, concerns abound. It is financially irresponsible to continue on a path potentially of adding that as well as another $25 million in debt. When are we going to hear about your 2023 budget plans? Shouldn't that precede pursuing these bonds? The city has a huge surplus and an increase in sales tax revenue and property values. Tax rate cuts should be an immediate priority. Currently, perhaps talk to a cross-section of your residents. Quality of life to them is survival, food, clothing, shelter, air conditioning, not grand parks, and many, many other needs abound. Please wait on this initiative. I understand that you discussed it in the study session today. Obviously, my remarks were prior to that, but I would like to reiterate my feelings. And in addition, in light of the fact that Farmers Branch is seeking to issue certificates of obligation bonds in the amount of $25 million for the STARS facility, which is a fabulous opportunity for Farmers Branch, I would implore you to get a contract that the council can examine prior to you passing this initiative. The current contract that you publicized and made available to the public has numerous errors, strike-throughs, and is a poor excuse for an agreement. I strongly urge the City Council to demand that occur. Now, I strongly support and look forward to the details of your upcoming changes underway for the police and fire and all city employees' retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is James Lockridge. Name and address.
James Lockridge, 11771 Meyer Lago, Farmers Branch, Texas. Guys, I'm here today again, Mr. Dye. You know, it's sad that I get a letter like this from my hay crop telling me that I am breaking code and compliance. Okay, this is ridiculous. In this picture that they sent us right here, you can see that my right-of-way is 150 feet mowed. 150 feet. Can everybody see that? Does everybody else want to see it? 150 feet mowed off the curb. I shouldn't be getting these letters with everything that's been going on. Omar, this is in your district. Did you know about this? That's a problem. I told you when I met you in your office, if you don't control them and they don't stop going rogue, you're always going to have a problem. This is the second one that I have got. So at this address right here, if everybody wants to see, I took pictures. Not only did I do that, I'm going to give you pictures. This property has been brought to code compliance on numerous occasions. I watched Leo give a speech up here today telling us that that SLA was correct. If it's correct, tell me how come that house has never been addressed for the overgrowth of over 6 feet in his yard, chipping paint, and other issues that are code violations, guaranteed code violations. But you're going to come after me with your code compliance officers over a crop that the picture very clearly can see is 150 feet all the way around. Can you see it? 150 feet. Now, that's ridiculous. Now, the other issue I have was a complaint came in today to the city about my field. I took a picture of my grass. It is 8.5 inches through the whole field with places where there's Johnson grass that are 3 to 4 feet tall. The complaint came in of a nuisance of coyotes, rats, snakes. What's funny is when I called the person that did the complaint, she said she was instructed by a certain somebody at Farmers Branch to call and send an email, which I have on my phone, to residents in the apartment complex, telling them to call the city and file complaints on my ag pastures because the owner will not comply with city laws. And that was a city official that did that. So I have the email on my phone. It went out to everyone in the apartment complex. Okay, it's to a point where your officers are rogue.
10 seconds.
And we need to stop it today. Mayor Dye, I would love to have a meeting with you again on this as quick as possible. Or any city council member. Omar, this is your district. I'd love to visit with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockridge. Next is Tommy Hilkema.
Hi, y'all. As a lifetime member of the Farmers Branch
Address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tommy Hilkema, 2581 Brandywine. I thought you all knew that by now. As a lifetime member of Friends of the Historical Park, which was founded in 2006 to support the mission of the Historical Park, we raise funds by renting chairs at events. Most of our members are mature. And the last 2 events, we have had an awesome young force come out and help us. Now, the first event, they weren't sure what they did, but this event, they gave personalized service and carried your chairs to your spot. So the teen leadership group that helped us, I wanted to recognize tonight. These kids worked hard in the heat to deliver all these chairs to the spot that you desired. So Luke Hudson, Alea Castro, Riley Crabtree, Mariana Garcia, Faith Jimenez, Anais Turner, Colette Weinstrap, and their awesome leader, Sarah Rodriguez. They didn't complain. It was a contest between the girls and the boys. Who could carry the most chairs on their head? It was really, really inspiring to see our young people engaged. So I wanted to give you some good news, and I wanted to remind residents, clean your alleys, call Encore to cut the trees. That way we can keep our electricity on and we won't be hot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is David Carter.
David Carter, 3746 Ridge Oak. I'm here to talk about the parks and the sports complex. My curiosity is, in the times we're in economically and where we are as citizens in Farmers Branch, is it a wise use to spend $12 to $25 million for that? And have we done a study, how much of the parks are being used? Do we know, I mean, is this a wise use of money? Don't know. And when they build them, I know I work for one of the largest commercial property management companies, and we run into cost overruns. Are we going to hold the contractors to account for that if it does go to being built? Or is the citizens of Farmers Branch going to be on the hook for that? Also, with the Starters complex, are we going to charge people who are not residents of Farmers Branch more? You know, I mean, because can anybody come in and use the complex if it gets built? I mean, or is Farmers Branch going to pay the tab for people to come in from Dallas, Carrollton, wherever? So, some concerns, and I don't know whether that's the right use of money. I think we could do some stuff with our police and fire, making sure that our city streets are safe. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next is Brenda Broderick.
Good evening, Brenda Broderick, 13531 Rawhide. I am here, Mayor, thank you, and City Council. I am against the park bond at a cost ranging between 12 and 25 million. I don't believe that debt is in the best interest of the citizens of Farmers Branch. In our own personal lives, we try to avoid debt, and I think it would be wise to also avoid debt for the citizens here in Farmers Branch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Diana Day. Diana Day. Okay. Next is Andy Jones. Andy Jones. Next up is Roger Infante. Roger Infante. Timothy Hagan. Timothy Hagan. Brandon Moise. Moise, M-O-I-S-E. Probably saying it wrong. I apologize. Brandon. I'm going to read a few more names twice, see if anyone else wants to come speak. Just kidding. That's it for citizen comments. We will move to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. A second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Merritt, a second by Councilmember Williams. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no one requesting to speak, I will ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Did you vote? Did you log in? All right, I'm just going to do it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is our regular agenda items. I-1, consider adopting ordinance number 3734, amending Chapter 56, Property Maintenance of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Farmers Branch by amending Section 56-10, Definitions, to add definitions for access control device, multifamily complex, and parking garage, and amending Article 11, Minimum Property Standards, by adding Section 56-150, Minimum Security Standards, multifamily complexes, establishing multifamily complex security requirements, and take appropriate action. Mr. Bonanno.
Good evening, Leo Bonanno, Deputy Director of Neighborhood Services. We are here for, no, just okay.
Zoom, so we're going to present that.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you. We're here today to hopefully wrap up an 8-month project involving establishing new security features for apartment complexes throughout the city. You have Ordinance 3734 in front of you, and the presentation that I'm about to give is the same presentation that I gave at the last study session where I shared this information. It is exactly the same, with the exception of 2 slides at the end. And so I will take this at a brisk pace and refresh your minds, as well as give the folks here and at home a taste of what the ordinance involves, and then I'll be happy to go back and answer any questions that anybody has. But again, this all started in January of this year. We've had multiple meetings with apartment complex managers and owners throughout the city. I've had multiple presentations in front of you. We've been writing and tweaking the ordinance throughout the process, and the final result is what we're looking at today. A reminder that this ordinance applies to complexes with 5 dwelling units or more. This ordinance does not apply to quadplexes, even though quadplexes are considered multifamily apartment structures in Chapter 26 of our code. So quadplexes are left out of this intentionally. And a reminder that what we're basing this on, based on our last conversation together, is that these requirements will impact 2 groups of apartment complexes. They will impact apartment complexes that are currently under construction or yet to start and have not received a certificate of occupancy. And they will the requirements will kick in with any apartment complex that enters the mandatory crime reduction program, which is managed by the police department next year, so January 2023. So, again, this ordinance covers a number of things, all security related, pretty basic stuff. Cameras and equipment must have color images, function all the time, date and time stamps, labeling recordings, and so on. The trickiest part for some may be the number of cameras that are required, so let me just spend a minute on that to make sure everyone understands it. I'm sure some of my friends at the apartment complexes are watching right now. We have complexes varying in size from 1 building to 20 plus. Well, this ordinance only requires a maximum of 10 cameras on 10 buildings with dwelling units. Okay, so 10 cameras at most on 10 buildings, 10 apartment buildings. In addition to that, you are required to have cameras at the entrance and exit of the property, every entrance and exit, and every entrance and exit to any parking garages you might have. So maximum of 10 plus garages and entrances. If you don't have 10 buildings, if you only have 5, then 5 is your max. So hopefully that's clear, but again, as I've stated before, my office will be around to help complexes for whom this law kicks in when the time comes. Recordings must be kept for 14 days and either on site or using a third-party cloud provider maybe. Complexes get to decide where their recordings are stored. Signs will be required notifying folks on the property that they are being recorded. Accessory devices, meaning gates and things like that, will be required for parking garages. They will have to work at all times, just like anything else on the property. And lights and vegetation, and this is where one of the changes appears. Lights must be kept working at all times. That's standard for everybody, houses, complexes, commercial buildings. That's not really a noteworthy thing. But one of the changes that was made is in the vegetation section. And you'll see the green language that I added there states that well, let me back up a step. Our attorneys, Mr. Laughlin in particular, who helped me with this ordinance, the original language was a little bit vague as to what a hazard, what vegetation posed a hazard. And so he recommended, and I agreed, that we would better identify what the hazard was. And when it comes to security and vegetation, what we're talking about is vegetation that someone can hide behind. And so the new language that you'll see says any vegetation that's grown and it prevents a person from walking in a particular area and possibly being attacked along the way. That is considered hazardous vegetation, and the enforcement authority, which is my office, has the authority to say that has to go, or that has to be trimmed or moved. So we just made that a little bit more clear to identify what the hazard actually is. So that was one change. And the final change was this. We typically talk about multifamily rental licenses. And next year, or excuse me, later this year, you'll probably see me again talking about updating Chapter 26. Chapter 26 is where licenses are regulated. Apartment licenses, single-family licenses, short-term rental licenses are all in that chapter. Well, my plan is to convert these licenses to permits. It will not change the program in any way. It will not change costs in any way. The reason why I'd like to make this change is because the permitting module in our software is much more robust and user-friendly. It's easier to use, it's easier to apply online, it's easier to pay online, it's easier to assign inspectors on our side. So it comes with a lot of perks, and just to keep the language consistent, I'm switching the word license for permits here, planning to update that code before the end of the year. So that's why that change is there. That's really it. Our last slide has the 2 security cameras watching each other, keeping each other safe. Please do not install them this way. That is not up to code. But besides those 2 changes at the end, this is exactly what you've seen in the past. So are there any questions I can answer, double back on any topics before you all decide how to handle this?
Mr. Bonanno, thank you very much for the presentation. Councilmember Roman.
Thank you for the presentation, Leo. I just have one question. Would there be any instance in which a current complex would have to reapply or get a new CO? I didn't know if it was sold or if there was any situation where they would have to reapply for a new one.
You have to apply for a new CO if your name changes, if your owner changes, or if you're adding an addition or a phase that will need its own CO. So that's every day. This law does not create that. That is the law today. Mm-hmm. So those situations are not impacted by this.
Got it.
If this law is passed and then you sell your complex, a month or 2 down the road, you would have needed a new CO anyway. So nothing is changing. And no, this would not kick in with the security features. So,
Okay.
because it's an existing complex that's already CO'd. So,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leo. It's pretty easy to tell when a light's not working, but much harder to tell when a camera's not working. So just for the residents' benefit, can you summarize how we enforce regular checks, that kind of thing, of equipment to ensure that it's continually working?
Sure.
Thank you.
Code enforcement has a multifamily inspection program. We inspect every complex in the city every year. There are currently about 45, 46 of them. Last year, we inspected over 3,500 apartments. This year, we'll inspect more than that because we inspect apartments based on the age of the complex. As complexes get older, we are required by law to inspect more units in the complex. So we do that every year. That's kind of the baseline program. Now, what this does, this ordinance creates something else for us to check while we're there. And so what we will be doing to ensure compliance with this is when we are notified by the police department that a community is now on the crime reduction program, we will go meet with those folks, we'll make sure they understand the ordinance, and they understand they have a year to comply. We can help them come up with a plan that's in compliance. We don't want to set up anybody to fail. So the first step is to get them in compliance with just getting their equipment. Now, after that, we will inspect their equipment regularly, just like we do everything else every year. And so what that looks like is we will literally go into the office. We will, the law will require you to keep recordings for 14 days, right? So we are going to chat with the management folks who always know we're coming. This is not a surprise to them. And we're going to pick a day and time, and we're going to say, I'd like to see the film from that camera. And if they can pull it up, maybe a few cameras, they're in compliance. We'll take them at that. We're not going to check every camera. Unfortunately, we don't have resources or time for that. But we will test a decent amount to make sure they're in functioning order. If they cannot provide the recordings, or if they can't pull up images, then we have a problem. But we will help them fix it like we do everything else. We will work through the compliance process. The complex does get time to fix any violations we find during their inspection. And then we go back and confirm they've been fixed. Only after that do they get a multifamily permit next year, the following year. So you have to have a successful round of inspections. You have to pay all your fees. And then if you satisfy all that, have an up-to-date CO in case you've sold or whatever. If you do those things, then come the following year, you get your license for that year. So this is just something new that our code officers will inspect. And I don't see it being very much of a problem as long as managers cooperate, and most of them do. They're a good bunch. So.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions from council? We have one person signed up to speak to this item tonight, James Lockridge. Name and address, please.
James 11771, Myra Vista logo. Guys, I'm here because I got to visit with some apartment complexes today on this subject. A lot of the developers don't even know about this agenda item. They don't even know that this is even something that's going to get passed in the city of Farmers Branch. Second of all, has anybody in city council looked at the price that it's going to cost the developers to build, the price that it's going to cost the apartment complex people? And then the next thing I have is, what are we trying to say to the developers and the citizens and the residents coming to Farmers Branch? Hey guys, here we are, come over here. We got the top-notch security. You know, we have the highest crime rate. We have the highest this. I mean, it's making Farmers Branch look terrible. Why not let the people have the right that build these apartment complexes under the Property Rights Act? Has anybody looked at the Property Rights Act in the state of Texas and in the Constitution? Guys, we're stepping way out and above. I'm asking City Council today to hold this item, talk to the developers, not just the apartment managers that are here now that are on a list of I like you, you like me. And that's kind of the scenario that's going on right now after talking to some people. Whenever developers haven't even had the chance to sit down with city councilmen that's in their district for future development. No one's talked to them. No one. I can name 5 people right now that no one has brought this attention to them to say, hey, what do you think? I talked to one developer. It's going to cost them on their next phase $1.6 million. $1.6 million. Do you know what that's going to do to the rent for the people in the apartment complex? People are going to have to pay higher rent. What's that going to do to Farmers Branch? We're going to start losing citizens and residents because our rent's going to go up to start covering all of these changes that are going on to the people. We don't want people to come to Farmers Branch and look out and say, oh my gosh, look at all the security. How bad is the crime in Farmers Branch? Why not give the police department the tools they need? Why not enlarge the police department? Get more patrol officers. That's their job. You're taking the Freedom of Property Rights Act away. You're taking the freedom of people to have the right to come home without being watched 24/7. You know, you can't come in your gate without getting your picture taken. You can't walk down the hall without being recorded. You can't do anything. You're taking it away, guys. All I'm asking is everybody to put this on hold. Get with the people in your districts, the developers, the people that have future multifamily coming in, and really assess the situation before we start changing all this stuff and costing the citizens, residents, and the developers more money. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any more discussion from council? Leo, thank you very much. I do want to make note, given the comments that were just made, we had 2 listening sessions letters were sent out to every apartment complex and developers in the city. The first one wasn't that well attended. We heard that from people. So we held a second one, very well attended. I personally have not only met with the Greater Dallas Apartment Complex Association, but several other apartment complexes in the city to talk through this and their issues. And one of the main things that they were focused on is we don't want a retroactive policy, which this policy here is not a retroactive. This is for new development. And, you know, my day-to-day job is commercial real estate development. I understand that adding these features to a building is not $1.6 million. It is very cost effective when you do it on the front end because they can budget for it, they can lay the proper conduit. It makes it a lot easier to do this type of work. And what we're actually trying to accomplish is a safer community for all of us. Adding these devices, these components are tools that our police officers can use to help keep the crime rate that we have in Farmers Branch, which is low, staying low. And so, you know, yes, we're taking a little bit of a leap here, but after having these conversations, we feel we've landed in what is a good place for everybody, and something I think that we're willing to take the lead on because the safety of our residents, whether you own a home or whether you live in an apartment complex, is priority number 1 for us, and this is a testament to that. So I just want to share those comments about why we're doing what we're doing, how we got here, and what it means. And so if there's no other comments from City Council, this item is marked for action.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 3734 as presented.
I have a motion by Councilmember Williams.
Mayor, second.
A second by Councilmember Jackson. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no one requesting to speak, I will ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. Next is J2. Nope, I lied. I2. Consider approving resolution number 2022-090, authorizing negotiation and execution of a ground lease agreement with DSE Hockey Centers LP relating to the lease and operation of property generally located at the southwest corner of Denton Drive and Carrick Street, relating to the construction and operation of a multi-sport complex, and take appropriate action. Mrs. Cook.
Good afternoon. So tonight, again, we are talking about the Dallas Stars multi-sport complex. We have been talking about the multi-sport complex for a while now. And as you recall, it will be a 25-year lease duration with a 25-year ground lease. That's part of I-2. The 23.5 bond issuance for the multi-sport complex is part of J1 that Sherelle will cover in a hot minute in our public hearing. Annual rent, what we also call debt service, will be paid 100% by the Dallas Stars. And commencement of construction, it's our goal to commence in November and complete in August 2023. It's aggressive, but it's the goal. I have 4 slides, so I hope to get through all of them and we can discuss all the nuances of the red line. And so here's a timeline, the most recent one. So June 4th, we had a letter of intent that was approved by the City Council that basically authorized us to go get a lease execution done and bring forward so that we could issue the debt paid by the Stars. So we have a June 4th letter of intent approved, and here we are tonight, City Council meeting to vote on the bond issuance and the Stars lease. Today, we had to proceed with issuance of bonds for multiple reasons, and I'll let Sherelle go into all of those nuances. And depending upon today, tomorrow, begin competitive procurement process. That is the hope, that is the goal, that's literally in the morning. August 22nd, in a scenario, if we move forward, city receives bond money, it's approximate. November 2022, commence construction. August 2023, complete construction. This is an aggressive timeline. It's also tied to when volleyball and basketball leagues start, and so there's a reason why the Stars really need to be open in August. We didn't just pick August 2023 out of the air. I wanted to go into the whole timeline so we kind of understand why we've been running fast, although it might seem a little slow. January 4th is when we first had the discussion with the City Council to say, hey, this is what the CO debt means, and do we want to move in this direction with the Dallas Stars? They've been our tenant since 2004, and it's been a fantastic relationship. They have honored their debt. They have been a fantastic partner. And actually tonight we have their president, Brad Alberts, here in the audience, and I'll introduce him in a minute. March 3rd, 2022, we, as a council in executive session, we went through a design review of the concept building, and we provided feedback to the Stars of what we wanted to see. And they heard that, and we made some edits. And so in April, we came back with the new concept rendering and new pricing. And we decided to move forward with Farmers Branch Night Out boards. And so if you were at Farmers Branch Night Out, I was at the Historical Park one, we had the project board so the public could see more about the project and so they could understand it fully, and we were all there for any questions about how this works. July 19th, City Council regular session item. So here we are, we did the June 1st letter of intent. So it might seem like we're running, and we're kind of sprinting a marathon. However, we have been talking about this for a while, and please remember, before January 4th, 2022, we went through 2 different ideas to see, could the Stars build this with the private sector, with a master developer that we chose in our RFP process? And really that added too many fees, design fees and other fees when you start bringing the private sector in. So that was a stalemate, and we had to look at if we want the entertainment component in the station area and continue with that use so that we have multiple uses and not let it get boring and keep it exciting, then we have to continue in this vein. If you are ready, I have a white binder at your desk, and the second tab shows you some important red line changes from the packet lease agreement. So Friday, we had to throw up where we were. It's not always fun, but it's just part of local government. You have to be transparent, and you have to kind of stop a project and say, this is where we are. And then this is where we are now. So Friday to today, we have some changes. The important ones are on the slide in front of you. So we removed the language of the 6.6 because it's really negligible. We're tying the rent to the debt service. If that makes sense, that's page 1, and that's important. Section 4.1, rent. Rent's a big deal. Who's going to pay the rent? The Dallas Stars are going to pay the rent. They were always going to pay the rent. How they're going to pay the rent and when are some of the things that we had to work through. And as you know, today we issued the debt service, the debt bonds. Sherelle will go into that. But that gives us now the schedule to put in the lease. We didn't have that information until about 2 p.m. today. So this is rapidly moving and changing. However, still very excited about it and want to move forward. Section 4.3 escrow account. We had this in the original Children's Star Center agreement. We had 1 year of rent for worst case scenario. In case your tenant leaves, you have 1 year of rent. It's kind of common procedure. And so if you have 1 year of rent and somebody leaves, you basically have a year to pay your debt and find a new user. We'll have the same situation for the new Stars building within the escrow account. We have operational rights. Right now, the Stars provide public use hours at current facilities, and I know that they can talk about that. And I know we have a resident rate at our rec center, and so it will be, of course, open to the public, and you can rent it. Your select volleyball league can rent it. Your select basketball group can rent it. You can call the Stars at any time and rent it, and they will be happy to answer the phone. Section 6.3, construction cost. I'm just saying, similar to the new fire station, remember the fire station across from Brookhaven campus? So the landlord pays construction costs from the bond sale, similar to how we just did it a few years ago, if you recall that process. Section 16.18, we remove the word tenant can't pay rent if there's COVID. It's just the quickest way to say it. Still to pay the debt service. There probably will always be COVID. And we remove the word virus. So I do want to say, when we initially had this discussion, interim city manager John Land, and then before that Charles Cox, we were sitting around and saying, what an amazing partnership this has been with the Dallas Stars. So when you consider, if we had to go right now and find a tenant for a multi-sport complex, and we had to go around DFW, we would be lucky to get the Dallas Stars, in my opinion. We have an over 20-year history with them, and so we know how this works with them, and they pay their bills. It's just as simple as that, and I'm thankful for the partnership. I'd like to introduce Brad Alberts, if you have any questions for them, but before I do that, do you have any questions for me on the red line changes on this specific slide before I move to any other slides?
Does anyone have any questions at this time? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Allison. I know that this has been a sprint for you guys. Y'all worked very hard on it and really appreciate all of the effort that you've put into it. We have a lot to review and a lot of changes to consider in a very, very short amount of time. So,
no doubt,
bear with us with some of these questions. There was a provision in the version of contract that I had. 16.28 was a state of play provision.
Yes.
That's been removed in the new version, but I don't see it on your presentation of red line changes.
We didn't remove that on purpose. That was just a removal when we changed the formatting. So they are still agreeable to the stay and play provision. It basically says, at any cost reasonable, they will help us find tournaments to stay in our hotels. And as Ann Stokes mentioned earlier, typically a tournament likes to stay in a certain trade area. And so the provision is in there, and the partnership is still in place, which is actually more important.
Sure.
With the housing agency we have.
Okay, understand. So in my reading of the original language, I didn't feel like the language itself had some, well, I'll just say I feel like it lacked a little bit of substance. And so I thought maybe we could we could amend that provision that says that in marketing materials, the Stars would include a list of hotels and the web address and such, right?
Yes.
The current provision says they'll make reasonable efforts when acting as a tournament host to require and make it a condition for participation, which that's great, but I'm just wondering if we could add a little bit more to it.
Yes, we will list the hotels for sure. We will list our select and full service as well.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
That's all the questions I've had time to come up with, sorry.
Well, we appreciate your patience because this is a fast-moving train. It may seem like we've been talking about it forever, but we do have some deadlines that we're trying to meet with our partner, and so that's why we are where we are. But thank you for your patience, and thank you for reading my items.
Councilmember Roman.
I just have one question. So I realize that we've been moving very quickly. I don't want to forget about the Dallas Stars. Have they agreed to all of these changes?
They've agreed to these changes.
Okay.
And that's why they're here tonight, too.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions at this time? Oh, just so you all know, my button isn't working to see who's clicked it to speak, so I'll just be asking for the remainder of the evening.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mayor. Allison, just one question. In the
Yes, sir.
study session today, we talked
Yes.
on section 6.4, are related to construction of the additional parking. Could you
Yes.
just elaborate on that?
I can.
For the public in this particular session? Thank you.
Yes, so actually, let me go to a map that might be easier. So as you can see where the green star is, so we have the original Children's Health Star Center right there, the white roof. Then we have a very large parking lot, and then we have an area in Carrick Street where we will be building the building. The building will go, we will have to remove a portion of Carrick Street. We are going to carve up the northern section of that parking lot. The station area code allows for shared parking, so these two assets actually can share a parking lot. And so that's kind of the beautiful thing between that. So the parking will be between that, but we will only need to really touch the northern section, and that will be in the 23.5 bond. It won't be outside of it, and I'm not paying for extra parking. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the stars working on that.
Councilmember Jackson.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. So we can't pass this, well, if we pass this, we have to pass the next item, which is the bond.
That's why I put that second, because it wouldn't make sense to amend a lease.
Agreed.
But I'll bring that up separately in a separate presentation. If you have questions for that, I was going to open that next.
So the ask is since we're talking about the expense of the Star Center, again, we have to pass the bond or the COs in order to pass this, is for the benefit of the viewing audience, can they understand sort of very high-level summary of the cash flow timing here? Because we've said many, many times, the Stars are paying for a building that the city's going to own. But
Yes.
when it comes down to it, there's going to be some cash exchanges, bond money coming in, rent coming in at some point, construction crews being paid, contracts, all that kind of thing happening. Just very summarily.
I can hear Sherelle right behind me, so we've done this with the fire station, so I feel her coming.
And Councilmember Jackson, while they're, before they get started, let me just mention about that 1628. I just realized just now that somehow in the editing process between Friday and this morning, somehow that section did get dropped out of today's version that you got presented. So I've just made a note of that needs to make sure it's in there.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about cash flows. That's when the persons like me show up, right? Okay, so with the passage of these items, they're all married up together. One of the components of that does include the funding of the bond, which on Allison's slide, I don't know her slides, okay. So on the slide, it references the August 22nd date. That's a month from now, 30 days from now is typically like once we are done, provided that we vote affirmatively, those bonds will be funded about 30 days from now. That allows time for, in terms of the physical construction of the asset, to start the procurement process. You hear Allison saying, tomorrow morning, we're moving with getting that done. That allows time to start the procurement process. As Allison was sharing in her comments, that the construction of the asset would be handled similar to the fire station. I want to make it a little bit more plain. Basically, this is our asset. These $23.5 million are coming into our accounts, and we'll work closely with the Dallas Stars in terms of the construction of the asset, but ultimately we're responsible for the administration of those bond funds. So we will do that in working very closely with the Stars, but it'll be much like we were funding the GO fire station that is also our asset within the community. The funds will flow through the city. So that's that piece. That's the asset piece. Then there's another component in terms of the rental payments. So in the latest agreement, and I hate flipping through slides that I didn't build. In the latest agreement, we talked about the commencement of rental payments. So on one side of the house, you have the debt service. The first payments will begin in in August of 2023. And so as Allison is sharing details here in terms of the payments that will come in as the revenue to match those payments, they will come in ahead of the debt service payment. And so what we've worked through the mechanics of is making sure that the expense of the debt service and the revenue from the lease payments are married together, and that at no point in time would it require any city funds to make these debt service payments. Those are the key components. Is there any other questions related to cash movement? Okay.
You good? Okay. Anyone else have any comments or questions at this time? Okay. Have Mr. Albert
Yes.
come forward.
Mr. Albert.
Just name and address, please.
Brad Alberts, Dallas, Texas.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Allison, for inviting me over. I think, just to reiterate, I think Allison walked you through the details of this. Let me tell you this. I, on behalf of our organization, have never been more bullish about an opportunity than we are about this one. And we expressed that to Allison and John 3 years ago when we started these discussions. And as you know, because you have a history with us, we're used to this. We have 8 public-private partnerships scattered around DFW similar to this, including already one with your city here with our ICE facility. So we're familiar with this, and we understand how these youth facilities work. This is the best one we've ever seen. It's in the best location. And for those of you that are not in the youth sports world, Dallas and the surrounding area is in desperate need for facilities like this. We have a, thriving youth sports culture of all, hockey, volleyball, basketball, you name it, in this city, without enough facilities to house all of the young people in this city that want to play. So we understand that there's demand, and this location is perfect, the best in the Metroplex. So we know without a doubt that this facility is going to be instantly successful as soon as we get it built. We just need to get it built. The other 3 things that I wanted to touch on real quick that were somewhat hot buttons. Obviously, Allison has articulated them, but I want to reiterate so that you guys hear from me. We are your debt backstop. We pay your rent. We have done so, as Allison eloquently pointed out, for 20 years at our ICE facility. We pay our bills, and we intend to continue to do so moving forward. So I think everybody that's concerned about that in this forum can rest assured that the NHL team in Dallas is your backstop, and we've got your back on the debt service. The second piece is this is a great economic engine for the city, and we intend on helping you promote that. The question was about hotels and restaurants. That's an easy thing that we will do almost every time without exception when we have tournaments that are basketball or volleyball related. We want those people coming and staying in Farmers Branch hotels and eating in Farmers Branch restaurants, and we will promote that whenever we're starting, and marketing tournaments, which we intend to do quite frequently, because that's the key to making these businesses successful. So I think those things are really important for you guys to know. The third thing was just to make sure that you understand that we're gonna back you up on the debt. So I appreciate you allowing me to come. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but we're as bullish on this as we've ever been on any project.
Mr. Alberts, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
I'd like to make a comment. This is a really exciting time. For me personally, the Prayer Council did an awful lot of work on this initiative before I came on a month or so ago.
Yeah.
The Stars have been a great partner in the existing facility, and I really look forward to, constructing this new facility and making it a real, I'll say, billboard, right, for Farmers Branch. So I look very much forward to moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else? Councilmember Merritt?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Alberts. Appreciate this opportunity to hear you speak and represent the Stars. Obviously comfortable with the operations. Obviously, we'll get a little closer to making sure that the residents have an opportunity to use the facilities on periods that are in season and out of season. I read that in the contract or the paperwork that we received, and it's been updated here. But could you just elaborate on what you may know, it's probably further down your organization, on the operational aspects of that?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. That was the other point I wanted to raise. For anybody concerned about citizens of Farmers Branch having, available time slots, like I said, we do this all over the place, all over the Metroplex in very similar arrangements. We have public carve-outs in every one of our ice rinks. We will continue to do that here. Exactly how that looks, we've got to work through that, but our intention is to make this, a viable opportunity for all Farmers Branch citizens, and obviously that to be financially in their benefit. And then, we'll work through those specifics as we figure out the operational plan. Just so you guys also know, our intention is to put the biggest girls volleyball club in the Metroplex into this facility and have this be their home. TAV is the name of the volleyball club. It's 300 young girls from ages 10 up to 18 that will be playing here in a vibrant sport that's growing rapidly with very expansion of tournaments. The weekends are going to be busy in this building for sure.
My daughter is a good friend of a former TAV player.
Well, then you know.
Then you understand, the residents need to understand, we're talking about national caliber volleyball, winning championships at the national level.
Yeah, so, the best program in the city by far, and one of the best volleyball programs in the country, and certainly the biggest. I mean, it is a home for, like I said, 300 young girls to play volleyball.
Mr. Alberts, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
One more question, sorry. Maybe a question for Allison, but I did notice that there was language in this version and Friday's version that removed the marquee. Just what was that about?
We don't allow billboards in Farmers Branch, so the first version from the attorneys had it in there, I think maybe from a lease language from 2004 maybe. So I just said we don't allow billboards, but we do allow digital signs like on our Children's Health Center. So I just had to make the clarification, and then we don't allow certain things on the billboards, the digital sign. So we have to be just very clear about that, or it opens us up to problems.
Okay, so in the rendering, there's appears to be a big digital billboard. There will still be that.
There'll still be that, and it will have the naming rights, and they can promote the events and whatnot in their name, but they can't sell tobacco products and alcohol.
The primary difference, again, from a zoning standpoint and sign regulations, is your billboards are your signs that promote off-premises type of events. So this would be, or advertising for goods and services that aren't on the property.
Yeah, car dealership.
So we want to make sure, marquee, and in fact, the language, I think we made real clear under the Star Center, when we amended the Star Center lease, a number of years ago to add the big digital sign out there. Again, it has similar type language that doesn't allow for the off-premises. It's got to be for on-premises events, city events, things that are happening, as well as promotions of the Stars itself, for games, and their practices at the Star Center when they come and things like that.
Okay, so it's just a difference in legal definition of certain terms, but there will still be them. Okay,
right. Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for asking.
Mr. Land.
Hi, Mr. Land.
Brad, good to see you again. It's been a few hours?
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks. You brought this opportunity to us in 2019, and we worked for over a year trying to build that into a project. It didn't work out. We went to Centurion American and tried to work that out on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
We got fairly far along there. It didn't quite work out. I know we're not the only community that has been talking to you, and I appreciate you staying with us through this. This feels very rushed, but it has been a long journey, and we are concerned about interest rates with what the Fed's going to do. We're also worried that, I know you're receiving calls from some of our competing cities, and we appreciate you staying with us through this, and it means a lot for you to be here tonight. I think that gave us all a lot of confidence. Looking at a red line document like that, one of the questions is, well, how do the Stars feel about it? To have the president and CEO come here tonight and say, we're in, means a lot, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks, John, and I think we love our relationship with the City of Farmers Branch, and it means a lot for you to say that, and one of the reasons why we want to be here is because of the relationship. We trust you, I think you trust us. There are things you got to work through to make these things work, but we trust that we can get that done where there's a fair deal for the city and there's a fair deal for us. And like I said, I've never been more bullish about a project than this. This is a home run from an economic impact for the city. This will be successful the day we open it.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
very much.
thank you, guys.
Mr. Carter, I know you signed up to speak. There's 3 different opportunities, but I didn't know if you wanted to. Okay, thank you. Diana Day also spoke or asked to speak to this item. I don't know if she has shown up. Nope, okay. All right. Seeing no one else signed up to speak, does anyone else have any comments or discussion at this time? No. I think Kevin wants to add some clarifications.
Right, and really, this is just a correction, and it's a error on my part, largely because I was working off of about a 2-year-old concept plan in my head with respect to drafting this particular resolution, where it says in the resolution the southwest corner of Carrick and Denton Drive. That's not where this facility is located. It's actually more accurately described as northwest corner of Carrick Street and I-35 Service Road would be the more accurate location on the property. So I just wanted to note that correction that needs to be made in the resolution. So it'd be the resolution as presented with the correction of the location of the property as described.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, seeing no more discussion, this item is marked for action. And so with that, I will move to approve resolution number 2022-090 with the modifications that Mr. Laughlin just described.
Mayor, I motion that we move to approve resolution 2022.
I just did that.
Oh, just want a second.
Yeah, okay. Just need a second.
I'll second then.
Awesome, thank you. Is there any more discussion? I don't see anyone else requesting to speak. I will ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. Next is step 1 of 3. I3, consider approving resolution number 2022-091, authorizing negotiation and execution of an amended and restated ground lease agreement with DSE Hockey Centers LP relating to the lease and operation of the property at 12700 North Stemmons Star Center, and take appropriate action. Ms. Cook.
Sherelle said you better clap for her item too, so please do know that she does mean that. Okay, so second item of the night is the Children's Health Star Center, the existing building that we have right now that we've had a lease with since 2004. We are opening that up and we are making an amendment. And the Stars wanted to match the lease duration, meaning they will have 25 years of the building to the north. They wanted 25 years for their asset to the south so that the lease durations could match. So I only have one slide tonight because there aren't a lot of changes. These are the most important things to know about the entire amendment. This is the meat and potatoes of it. We did the exact same format, certificate of obligation debt service paid by the Stars starting in 2004. In 2004, it was a 25, and we want a 25-year lease extension to match the new multi-sport lease duration. So in 2017, we did a lease amendment, and we negotiated these terms already. 2022 to 2026, we receive $600,000 a year, and that matches the debt service. In 2026 and 2029, it drops down to $432,000. 2029 to 2048, which is a portion of the extension that we're talking about tonight, the annual lease payment won't be a debt service anymore, so that will be cash into the city, is $300,000 for us to keep and help maintain. So base rent, meaning that's what they pay us every single year with no escalations after year 2029. The difference is the 2017 lease amendment had the landlord, the city, paying 100% of the capital expenditures for the building. So it was a breakdown of 50-50, and then it was just them to start with, and then we were going to take over after 2029 all the capital expenditures. That's how we had fleshed it out in 2017 in the lease amendment. However, since they are asking for no escalations, and we decided they agreed to take over the capital expenses, which average about $120,000 to $140,000 per year. So that will be on them during the lease duration. And it is important to note, the new multi-sport complex is a very pretty looking building. Well, as you know, when you play select volleyball and basketball, you don't need a pretty looking building. So what we were asking for was not what the Stars needed for the new multi-sport building. So as an accommodation, they're going to pay more rent than they really needed to, because that building is quite pretty. So the $300,000 with no escalation also helps offset a rent that really is a kind of an expensive building for not really needed. So that's where we got to the 300. So these two things run together, and that's why we're both looking at them tonight. And we had this in June on the city council with all the lease amendments, and I know I send you way too many attachments. So you had the original lease in 2004, we did 2 addendums in 2004, we did a 2017 lease amendment, and all the resolutions attached to that. And then tonight, we're considering opening it back up so that the lease extension matches the 25 years. We're keeping it at $300,000. They're taking over all the capital expenditures, and we each pay 50-50 for major repairs, as we've always done. That's really the meat and potatoes of this one. This one is easier in nature because it's kind of a well-oiled machine, and most of it was already negotiated. But Kevin is cleaning it up and still formatting it.
No, actually, I'm done. It's
Okay.
now Mr. White's turn to take a look at it.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Councilmember Merritt.
Just to clarify, the debt service ends in 2029, is that correct?
Actually, the debt service ends in 2026.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I think that's very important.
It is important.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Okay. Thank you very much. We don't have anyone else signed up to speak for this item. It is marked for action, so if there are no other questions, go. I will say I move to approve Resolution 2022-091 as presented.
I second.
I have a second by Councilmember Williams. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I will ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Passes unanimously. Next are our public hearings. J1, conduct a public hearing to consider ordinance number 3749, authorizing the issuance of the City of Farmers Branch Combination Tax and Revenue Certificates of Obligation Series 2022, levying a tax and payment thereof, approving the official statement, a paying agent registrar agreement, and a bond purchase contract, and enacting other provisions related thereto, and take appropriate action. Ms. Evans-Jones.
Okay, is that it? Hello. Get my documents before me. One moment. Sherelle Evans-Jones, Director of Finance with the city. I am here before you tonight to discuss ordinance 3749, which relates to the debt component of the previous two items that we've been talking about. I'm joined tonight by Marty Shue, Managing Director in the public sector. I was trying to do it right so you wouldn't have to come and correct it. You do it on the spot.
He is not disregard that. I'm always wanting to work. All right, there you go.
I'm joined tonight by Marty Shue, Managing Director in the Public Finance Sector with Hilltop Securities, Rob Collins, Partner with Bracewell LLP, who is our bond counsel on this transaction, and Nancy Rocha, Director with Stiefel, Nicholas and Company, one of our two underwriters for this transaction. After a few brief comments from myself, I'll turn the floor to Marty Shu, who will walk you through some of the components of the packet that each of you received prior to the meeting. And thereafter, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. The first component that I wanted to talk about is connected to the ordinance 3749 is a copy of the ordinance, and you see in it that it has blank items, open blanks, et cetera, for the amounts. This is typical. This is what always happens when we issue bonds and debt, because the bonds are sold the morning, or the bonds are, the orders are placed the morning of for the transactions, and so we don't know the answers until the bonds are sold and we get it in this format, et cetera, to be able to present to you. So we've had some comments about things in what state and whether items were complete. I just wanted to be sure that we understood that that is by design. So each time you get a bond presentation, it's going to have intentionally some blank holes in it. The second thing I wanted to talk about is earlier today, related to the multi-sport complex, we received orders for a total net cash amount to us of $23.5 million. The lease revenue we've talked about in the previous items which have been passed. We have been working very closely with our staff, our lawyers, from the city, as well as with the Dallas Stars, our own bond counsel. And as I mentioned before in some of my previous comments, we're comfortable that the debt service that exists with these bonds and the lease payments that will cover the bond payments, that they match, and that we don't have any financial exposure in terms of approving these bonds. As been mentioned, the history of the previous hockey arena and the payments that have been received, and we have not had any collectability issues with respect to making the debt service payments on the existing hockey facility. With respect to this issuance, I also wanted to note that related to, we were rated by two different rating agencies. Fitch affirmed our AA+ rating. S&P upgraded our rating to a AAA. Wow, I am standing here saying that. Sorry. Thank you for letting me have that moment. I'm back. Included in the document are, under that second tab, are the specific details that were provided from the rating agency, if you'd like to read about more information in terms of how they came to their assessments. The bonds, the certificates of obligation that were sold and placed today have a 25-year maturity, as you've heard, 25, 25, 25, so it coincides with the revenue. The interest rate costs and those details, Marty will go through that with you. And one other thing, so I have before you this document. So this is kind of the roadmap for how we got here. So timing of, what all had to happen for us to arrive here. It started with the bond portion. There were a lot of things that had to do with council meetings to talk about if you were interested, et cetera. But with respect to issuance of these certificates, it started in April the 19th with council approving to call for the bonds and provide notice of intent. There has been a ton of steps, meetings with rating agencies, publishing of our offering circulars, et cetera. The one thing, this is an older document, so we haven't updated it, but I wanted you to be aware, we were initially planning on going to pricing in June 22nd and accomplishing the remainder of those steps. So that would have been a total of about 9 weeks. So we had a few more weeks to work together and getting that done. So between providing notice to the public, on the 19th, and then tonight. That provides a whole whopping 13 weeks of opportunity for comment, question, discussion, et cetera. So I wanted to just kind of show you how that comes about and how that happens. Allison has walked through the details for the timing on the lease and how those payments would work. With respect to that, I think those are my comments. I'd be happy to pause and address any questions that you have before we bring Marty up to provide more details about the specifics of the sale.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? Councilmember Jackson.
Just one thing to highlight, and thank you very much, Sherelle, for pointing something out in this newest book. Again, a lot to read in a very short amount of time. But one of the questions that I had earlier was, we just received this upgraded rating from S&P, and now we're about to take on the additional debt, even though it's going to be paid for, by the stars. How does that affect our credit rating per se? And I think I just found the answer, so I just wanted to point that out for residents that S&P had anticipated. Looks like the taxable series of 2022. So if I'm reading that correctly, they knew this was coming and included that in their consideration.
Yes. So we don't, the meetings and the conversations with the rating agencies, kind of expensive. So we don't go talking to them unless we got a bond. Generally speaking, I'm saying they're our partners, but to get rated is a pretty expensive process, especially in connection with the debt issuance. So when we sit down and meet with rating agencies, it is to talk through the specifics of the project and what we are seeking funding for, and they review all of the details in terms of our ability and our credit worthiness and the ability for our, should we be called for repayment. All of that was made available and known to both rating agencies at the time that they provided the ratings.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Okay.
All right. Marty, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Marty Hsu with Hilltop Securities. We represent the city as your financial advisor. I'm just going to add a little bit of extra color on your bond sale today. Your bonds were sold in the open market today, so they were released for orders. You received a very good market response. You had a lot of strong investor demand, and as such, your underwriters were able to provide a bid for purchase of your bonds to produce a true interest cost of TIC of 4.65%. In your packets, we've included behind the first tab a full set of your final numbers for you, so you can see exactly what that rate translates to in dollars. But I feel like I'm missing out on a little bit of the thunder, because a very large part of the strength of that investor demand for your bonds is directly due to the strength of your credit rating. So the credit ratings of the city are much like you or I, our own personal credit ratings. The higher your personal credit rating is, the lower the interest rate is when you go to buy a home or a car. The same holds true for the city. The higher your credit rating is, the lower your cost of borrowing. So as was already mentioned, you were affirmed by Fitch at the AA+ category, but you were upgraded to the AAA category by S&P Global. And what's significant about that is that it's a perfect score. I don't know that that was conveyed, and for the people that are listening, I think it's important to note that it's a perfect score, which means there is no rating category higher. So you have achieved a very large milestone today. I'm very happy to share in this news with you, and I want to congratulate you on this milestone. And of course, both of those rating reports are included behind tab B of these packets before you. And they do really highlight the strength of the management here at the city. And as Ms. Evans-Jones already pointed out, the rating was issued in connection with the issuance of this bond. So it's very common as part of the normal bond issuance process, the city has to apply for and purchase a bond rating. And so staff, although she was very modest, they had to provide a lot of information and sit down and answer a lot of questions so that they could conduct that full credit assessment on the city. So again, congratulations. It's a very big milestone. You're in a very elite category of cities to achieve this. This is the final step of the bond issuance process tonight, so by adopting the ordinance before you tonight, you're effectively accepting this proposal and locking these interest rates into place for the life of the bonds. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? No? Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
I thought y'all were going to clap. Thank you.
I think they were waiting for us to approve it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, this is a public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up to speak. If there are any comments or questions, discussion from council, seeing none, then I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 3749 as presented.
Second, Mayor.
I have a second by Councilmember Roman. Is there any more discussion? Well, and also close the public hearing. I want to modify my motion.
I'll second that as well.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no one requesting to speak, I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. And now we can clap. Mr. Albers, thanks for being here tonight. We look forward to seeing the new building. The stars. Next up is J2, conduct a public hearing to consider the extension of ordinance number 3748, curfew for minors, as codified in Article 2 of Chapter 46 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Farmers Branch, and take appropriate action. Deputy Chief Stokes. Is that the right phrase?
It is.
Okay.
Thank you. I was demoted in study session, I guess. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Management. Deputy Chief Eric Stokes, City Farmers Branch, and I'm going to go over the ordinance number 3748, curfew for minors. Our current ordinance, 3578, expires on July 23rd. As state law, it's required every 3 years that the City of Farmers Branch review the ordinance and the effects that it has on the community and the problems the ordinance was intended to remedy. And also, we're supposed to conduct a public hearing on whether we need to continue the ordinance, modify it, or abolish the ordinance. The ordinance applies to any person younger than 17 years of age. Our curfew hours are 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, 12:01 a.m. to 6 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays. There's also exceptions to the ordinance. For instance, if a child's coming back, a TAV volleyball player's coming back from the Star Center, and they got a late game because they won, that's an exception. They're going to one of our hotels or something like that. That's an exception to the ordinance. If they're out with their parent, guardian, running an authorized errand, going to and from work, participating in a school or religious activity, or other authorized supervised activity, are exercising their First Amendment right. Before taking any law enforcement action, police officers are going to ask the age of the offender and where they're going, where they're coming from. We will not cite if they meet one of those exceptions or if one of the defense prosecutions occurs. The offense, a minor who remains in any public place or on the property of an establishment within the city curfew hours, or a parent or guardian knowingly permitted or by insufficient control allowing a curfew violation, so we can cite the parent as well. And an operator, owner, or any employee of an establishment knowingly allowing a minor to remain on the premises of the establishment during curfew hours. And the fine for this is not to exceed $500. Some numbers. Since August 2019, we've had 13 curfew violations, citations issued. 21 of those offenses were committed by juveniles during curfew hours. And we had 13 documented instances of juveniles being victim of a criminal offense during those curfew hours. With those statistics, we're asking that there's a need to effectively address the problems of reducing criminal offenses committed by juveniles and reducing the number of juveniles victimized by perpetrators of criminal offenses. Again, officers, we're going to use our discretion. We don't want to victimize the child or subject them to the criminal justice system. We want to make sure that they are legitimately committing an offense of being out past curfew hours. The ordinance maintains the interest of public safety while ensuring the mobility rights of juveniles. And for that reason, we recommend that we continue with this ordinance. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Stokes. Anyone have any comments or questions? Councilmember Roman.
Hi, Deputy Stokes. I just had a quick question. So on 46-31 under definitions, I don't see where it lists Friday, but it lists Sunday twice.
Yes, it is, because we're going into, so if you go Thursday or Friday, 12:01 a.m. is that Friday night into the Saturday morning. So that's where it is. That's where it goes from there.
Okay.
So it's midnight.
Okay, got it.
So that's where it's at. And so, I was thinking of the other, and now you got me talking. It's too late. Do you remember that? You may not. You're young. Do you remember the old catchphrase, it's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are? Do you remember? See, okay, yes, you remember all that, don't you? Yeah, so I think this is where someone's coming from. I used to get some of that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any others?
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Stokes. Yes, that was in my head. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? So do we have a curfew issue in Farmers Branch, would you say?
It's hard to say how this ordinance, since we had this ordinance in effect since 2017, it's hard to say how well we're doing the ordinance and how good it's going. But yes, if you look at the 13 offenses that we've had, most of them were stolen vehicles, burglary of motor vehicles, and things of that nature. And so we're trying to curtail that, and that's the why I think we should continue the ordinance, and I recommend that we continue the ordinance so that we go down. I want our numbers to go down.
So we've had 13 offenses since 2017? Is that what you're
From
saying?
2017, that's correct.
Okay, all right.
2019, I'm sorry, since August 2019.
2019?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. And is this ordinance common with
Yes,
other
it
policies?
is. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
All right.
On
very
the
good.
local stick, yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Merritt.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Stokes. Just to go back, I did go back and look at the presentation from 2017, and we had 3 offenses. It was 3 and 15. So therefore, we have more occurring now than we did in 2017. So it is continuing to be a problem. And if Chief Stokes wants to draw down the numbers, we're all very supportive of that as well. So
Thank you for doing your numbers and your research, boss. And then if you go back to that second stat, it was where it said we had 0 documented instances of juveniles being victim.
That is correct.
We went up to 13.
That is correct.
And those offenses that we were talking about are your endangering indecencies and those offenses that were there. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yes. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other comments? Nope. This is a public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up to speak. So if there's no more discussion amongst council, I would look for an action to close the public hearing and take action.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing and continue ordinance number 3748 as presented.
Mayor, I'd be happy to second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Roman. I have a second by Councilmember Merritt. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no one requesting to speak, I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Passes unanimously. Next is J3. Conduct a public hearing and consider approving resolution number 2022-084 for a detailed site plan with special exceptions for a retail service use childcare facility on an approximately 3.3 acre tract located at the southeast corner of Valley View Lane and Mercer Parkway, and take appropriate action. Mr. Webb.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Chris Webb, Senior Planner with the City of Farmers Branch. Item J3 is going to be for a property that's located at the southeastern corner of Mercer Parkway and Valley View. The site itself is approximately 3.3 acres in size, and there's nothing there right now. It's undeveloped. However, the property owner has applied for a detailed site plan for a child care facility, which I do want to point out that in PD 99, which is the zoning district for this site, that is allowed by right. It is the special exceptions that are really the reason that this case is coming before y'all this evening. of which there are 4. And before we get into that, I just want to kind of go over the overall detailed site plan. The Kitty Academy site is going to be for the southern half of this development, really around the corner of Mercer Parkway and Perrin Lane. The northern half that is shown on this drawing is strictly conceptual at this time, and they will be required to bring that back through a detailed site plan process for that northern half as well. The other item I want to point out is the little path that's highlighted in yellow. That is going to serve as a mutual access easement that will connect Mercer Parkway to another mutual access easement that runs from Perrin Lane to Valley View. So that is kind of what's going on over there as far as the overall site plan itself. And also want to touch on that site landscaping. They do meet all requirements. There is an additional landscaping requirement that they are requesting a special request on, or special exception on, and I'll touch on that here in a moment. On the bottom right of your screen, that's going to be the front or Valley View facing side of the Kitty Academy. So just kind of an idea of what the building is going to look like if you were to see this from Valley View. This is expected to be overall a 2-phase development, so we will see additional development within a relatively near future. Going to go ahead and dig in on the special exceptions. There are 4. The first one is going to be for the building replacement from the required front setback. The PD 99 requires that buildings on the site be mostly or relatively close to street frontage. In this instance, because the front of the building is facing towards Valley View, they are not going to be able to meet that front setback that is required of PD 99. However, this site is going to be eventually platted into 2 lots, and because of that, the portion that is facing Valley View is really not going to be, well, it will be, I guess, the front of the building. It's not necessarily going to be measured from Valley View. The portions that are facing Mercer Parkway and Perrin Lane will actually kind of serve as a pseudo front to the building, and the applicant has made enhancements to the site itself to help make that more, I guess, street presentable. And I'd also like to touch that this will be where the playgrounds will be. There will be an outdoor learning area here. So it is going to be an active area that's within that setback along Perrin Lane and Mercer Parkway, unlike your typical kind of retail setting that usually has kind of a bland rear to the building. The next special exception request, and staff is supportive of that special exception request. The next one's going to be surface parking behind the front building facade, and that is going to be these areas here that are shown in yellow, highlighting where the parking is going to be. There are proposed 39 lots. I know that was a discussion point at our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And at the time, 44 spaces were being provided. P&Z requested that they reduce that, so the applicant has reduced that down to 39, which is the minimum number of parking spaces that would be required of this site, both per PD 99 and also our CZO. In addition to that, though, based off of how the building is oriented and also the fact that the lot remains as one and has not been replatted yet, these spaces are technically in front of the building. However, after full development of the site and after the replat of this, these spaces will be interior, the parking will be interior to the site, which is the full intent of PD 99 for having the spaces kind of behind the front building facade. So it really does meet the intent of PD 99, and because of that, staff is also supportive of that special exception request. The third one is going to be for street trees lining Perrin Lane. When we were looking at utility drawings, we realized that there is a water line and a private utility easement that run along Perrin Lane that prevent the applicant from planting street trees along that site. To help offset that, they have added additional landscaping and also additional shade trees interior to the site. And they have tried to kind of add a couple shade trees where they had a little more room at the southeast corner of the property. However, they aren't going to meet the full requirement. But because of the reasons I mentioned with the utility line and the water line, or the utility easement as well over there, staff is also supportive of that special exception request. The final one is going to be for reduced building fenestration, which is essentially doors and windows. Since this is a school, there is a bit of a safety concern there. So they aren't going to necessarily meet the requirement, which is 60% of the facade minimum be doors and windows. I do also want to point out that that's also in effect for ground floor retail of multi-story mixed-use buildings. And because this is a single-story building, it's really not your typical retail use. The PD 99 does allow for these special exception requests to understand that that there could be unique situations in which that may not be met, and this is one of those. And so because of the use that's going in here, staff is supportive of this special exception request as well. Overall, this does fall under the West Side Plan. I do want to point out that this is the oldest active comprehensive plan that we have currently. A lot of the area around there has not quite developed in the way the West Side Plan had envisioned. So while it does call for this area to be high-quality office, research, and development uses, given the current characteristics of this site, staff is still supportive of this use going in. And again, it is an allowable use under PD 99. Just one last thing, on June 27th, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-1 to approve the detailed site plan with these special exceptions, with the condition that the subject property be replatted prior to building permits being issued, and that the overparking be reduced as presented in the resolution 2022-84. Again, the parking has already been reduced, so that's no longer a concern here, but the replatting will be something that staff and P&Z continue to recommend prior to any building permit being issued for this site. That's going to conclude my presentation, but if you do have any additional questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything, and also the applicant, the property owner, and also a representative from Kitty Academy are here today and to answer any additional questions as well.
Mr. Webb, thank you very much. Does anyone have any? Councilman Roman.
Hello.
Yeah.
So I understand that right next door to the Kitty Academy, should this be passed, there is already a daycare facility in place.
There's that Steam Spark Montessori that's over there. As we see it, I guess a couple things want to keep in mind. One, this use is allowed by right within the zoning district, so staff can't really say yes or no when it comes to, I guess, this location being picked for a daycare facility. Two, the functions of the Montessori versus this are also going to be a little bit different. I'll let the applicant speak on why they chose this site. They know that there's that Montessori over there, so I'll let them handle officially, I guess, why this site. But as far as a staff looking at this, we can't necessarily just say no simply because there's already an existing use right next door based off of just the use alone.
That's not where I was going. My
Okay.
question is, were there any exceptions that were asked for by the daycare facility next door?
Yes, there were. It was building fenestration, so again, doors, windows, site setback. It was parking in front of the building exceeding the minimum requirement, or maximum requirement rather, and then a roofing pitch special exception as well.
Okay. And then in the actual plan, can you show me where the pickup and drop off is going to be?
Yes. So pickup, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
All right. Pickup drop off is going to be right here. There's actually going to be a porte-cochere that extends out in front or over this area to help provide families with additional protection from the elements. But the idea is that cars will be able to enter either via Mercer Parkway or the private drive, and they'll be able to come down here and pick up, drop off their students out in front of the building, interior to the site, and then exit out, and then again, they'll have an option whether they want to go Mercer Parkway or back towards that private drive.
Got it. You mentioned that they reduced some of the parking spaces. Maybe I was writing the question down, and I missed it, but can you just tell me one more time what is being done with that space that is now freed up?
Officially, it is going to be on what will ultimately, I guess, be the northern extent. I'll have to leave that answer ultimately up to the applicant to kind of define what they want to do with it. However, likely it's going to remain as some sort of grassy landscaping or something like that, but I'll let the applicant, I guess, speak to that more fully.
Okay. I also had a question about how quickly the second portion is going to be built after the first one is done.
In communication with the applicant, I know they want to move pretty quickly on the northern half of this development and kind of fully develop this site. No timetable has really been established yet, but it would be, I guess, my assumption in discussions with the applicant that it would be in the near future versus the far future. So I'd say
So
next.
the applicant is here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, and then I did attend the planning and zoning meeting where they discussed about this, and I know some of the commissioners expressed concern with, of course, there being two, facilities of like kind next to each other. I know that the applicant mentioned that he spoke to the owner of the other childcare facility and mentioned that they were going to be working together in some way, and I was just kind of curious to see what that was. And then one other thing that I thought I just mention is that I know that there was a study conducted by CFB ISD regarding putting a school there at one point, and they determined that there wasn't a need for that because there was capacity at other schools. So that was the only thing that from the discussion that happened at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting that kind of gave me concern about the feasibility of the business. But I understand that this is kind of like a corporate structure where the corporation provides support to kind of like the franchise owners.
Correct.
And they've done some studies about that. So I think that resolved my concerns there.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make sure I pointed out that there was a study conducted by CFBISD at some point. May I ask my questions to the applicant?
Sure.
Well, before we do that, I have other people that might have questions specifically for Mr. Webb, and then we'll let the applicant present and then ask them questions. Councilmember Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Quick question, it's very simple. Along Perrin Lane, I assume we have a sidewalk there. The graphic is a little difficult to read.
Yes, sir. There will be a sidewalk there along Perrin Lane, and then it will also continue up Mercer Parkway as well.
As width of the sidewalk, are we at the minimum width of 4 feet or?
Yes, sir. I believe Perrin Lane it's either 5 or 6 feet, but it's in excess of 4 feet. Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Okay, that's my only question. It was difficult to discern if we had, pedestrian access around the building. No other questions.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chris on a technical standpoint? Nope. Okay. We'll ask the applicant to come up, just name and address.
Hi, my name is Samina Huda, and I'm one of the owners with my partner Ali here, and we have the architect of the project, Devin, as well as the vice president of construction from the corporate Career Academy, Chris Camarada, with us to answer any additional questions. So you want to go ahead and answer about the parking spots?
Yes, I'm sorry, can you repeat the parking?
Of course, yes. What do you plan to do with this space? Like you removed some parking spaces, and I was wanting to know what you're going to do with that extra space.
Yes, do I need to state my name and address as well? Or?
Oh, say that again.
My name and address? Or?
Yes, please.
Devin Nguyen, 825 Eagles Cliff Landing, Wiley, Texas, 75098. And to answer your question, Councilman, right now at the current stage, we are providing green space, which is basically grass and everything. And once we develop the north side, that will be incorporated into the northern development as well.
And Speaking of that northern development, how quickly do you plan on building that second portion?
Very quickly, because we want to keep the contractor that's building the Kitty Academy on site, and so they don't have to restage or anything else at a later date. But right now, we are working out the details of the site plans, so very soon.
Okay. And what kind of plans do you have for that future development? I know that that was a big concern to the commission, so I kind of wanted to make sure we talked about that too.
I'm sorry, you said?
I'm sorry, I didn't even realize my microphone wasn't even on. What plans do you have for the future development? I know that the commission had some concerns about that, so I wanted to make sure we were able to discuss it here.
Yes, did you want to answer that? Want to have Samina answer that?
Hi again, I'm going to state my name, Sabina Huda. I'm from 600 Creekside Court, Irving, Texas. So we are looking at this as a retail, medical, as well as a restaurant site. So we have a QSR, which could be a standalone coffee shop or a restaurant of some sorts. Knowing the COVID world, we want to really also look at an exception for drive-throughs and outdoor sitting areas for restaurants, which is now very much a need. We're also talking to a dentist who is interested in coming to this site. So we're in the talks right now, and there's also some other interest from medical group. So there's quite a bit of interest being shown to this site. So we are, of course, going to be trying to do our best to continue to plan for it once the Kitty Academy permit is in place and focus fully on this northern area.
Thank you. And then I think that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. This is a public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up to speak. So unless there's any more discussion, I will ask council to entertain a motion to close the public hearing and take action.
Mayor, I make a motion to adopt resolution close the public hearing and adopt the resolution R20022-084.
I have a motion by Councilmember Williams.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Jackson. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck.
Good luck. Thank you very much.
We didn't have an executive session today, so there's no action to be taken. And because there's no other business to conduct, I will adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:02 p.m. Everyone have a good night.